The signal first appeared on the outer edge of the solar system, on a quiet night shift when most of the team on Earth's Deep Space Watch stations were half expecting another routine day. The receiver captured a faint pulse, so weak that the system almost filtered it out as background noise. At first, it did not look important. Space was full of strange echoes, bits of old signals, dust clouds that distorted transmissions, and random waves from distant stars. But this one was different. It repeated. It had structure. It carried fear. The system flagged it as a possible distress call and forwarded it to a monitoring center where a tired human operator leaned closer to his screen. He lowered the volume, focused the filters, and listened again. The sound was cracked and uneven, as if coming through layers of static, but there was something in it that felt almost like a cry. Not angry, not hostile, but desperate. He stared for a moment, unsure whether he should wake the supervisor or wait for more data. After another pulse came in, even weaker than the last, he made the decision. He called it in. Soon, several stations all over Earth began scanning the area where the transmission came from. A rough image appeared. It was a spacecraft, small, barely holding itself together. Its outer hull looked burned, dented, and patched with emergency seals. The engines flickered like candles in a storm. Human analysts watched as the ship drifted slowly toward the solar system, not guiding itself well, but still moving with purpose, as if its pilot refused to give up. People on the ground started guessing. Could it be a lost probe from a distant civilization? Could it be something abandoned ages ago? Or was it carrying someone still alive inside? No one knew. But the more they observed, the more they realized the ship was not empty. Heat signatures showed movement. Several life forms, small and clustered close together. Not many, maybe a handful at most. And their energy readings were dropping fast. The first real debate started in an underground meeting room where Earth's Space Defense Council gathered to review the situation. Some members were cautious. A damaged ship might still hide a threat. Others argued that the craft was clearly dying, and whatever was inside was suffering. The footage on the screens showed a vessel that looked like it had been chased or attacked. Some parts were blown open. The shields were broken. It had the look of someone who ran as far as they could and barely made it this far. The council requested more information. Scanners found no dangerous weapons powered on inside the ship, only weak signals from emergency life support systems that were failing. The refugees, though no one had used that word yet, were huddled in what looked like a central chamber. The slow heartbeat-like pulses coming from them made many hearts on Earth tighten. Whoever they were, they appeared terrified. Then the distress call translated just enough for human linguists to pick up one thing. A phrase repeated again and again, not in a clear language, but in a pattern. It translated roughly to, request safe place, request mercy, no weapons, no threat, request safe place. The room went silent. One young communications officer, sitting near the back, whispered that it sounded like they were running from someone. When the higher-ups asked for her explanation, she said that distress calls from hostile forces usually sounded different. They were sharp, strong, bold. This one was trembling, frightened, exhausted. Every pulse carried the feeling of someone begging. Not to be ignored. She said they should at least check before. Pushing them away, her words carried more weight than she expected. Humans had a habit of listening to compassion, even in dangerous situations. And so Earth sent a small message toward the drifting vessel. A simple message in universal code used for first contact across many species. We hear you. We see your distress. Identify condition. For a long moment, the alien ship did not reply. The life sign readings flickered, and for a second, it looked like the possibility of communication was gone. But then the ship sent back a weak light pattern. It was shaky and incomplete, but enough to understand. They were injured. They were starving. Their systems were failing. And they were afraid Earth would reject them like every world before. That line was not perfectly translated. It arrived as a rough impression. Rejected by all. Please, not again. Humanity had many flaws, but indifference was rarely one of them. Once that phrase came through, the tone of the entire discussion shifted. Even those who wanted to follow strict security protocols felt something human inside them stir. Maybe it was sympathy. Maybe it was the memory of Earth's own long history, full of wars, disasters, and moments when people had needed help from strangers. Maybe it was simply that the aliens sounded like people who had run out of places to run. The Council ordered a small escort convoy to approach the ship. Not a military attack unit, but a cautious rescue team armed only for protection. Slowly, carefully, the human convoy moved toward the damaged vessel. As they got closer, they could see the cracks in the hull more clearly. Parts of the ship looked melted. Other parts looked shattered by impacts. It was hard not to wonder what kind of enemies could force a ship to flee so far it drifted into unknown space. Inside the alien craft, tiny figures began to move. They were clearly frightened. Heat scans showed their bodies shaking. Their chamber lights flickered in a pattern that looked like panic. They expected shots. They expected weapons. Every other civilization they had approached had driven them away without mercy. The human ships did not fire. Instead, they extended light beams for navigation guidance, showing the aliens that they could follow them safely. They broadcast a message in steady rhythm. No attack. We will guide you. Stay calm. You are not in danger. The aliens took several long moments to respond. When they finally adjusted their ship to follow the convoy, they did it slowly, as if expecting a trap. But the humans kept the path clear, quiet, carefully measured. During the escort, more scans came through. These aliens were small in number, but their bodies were covered in strange patterns that suggested burns or scars. Not fresh, but old. Injuries that told a story, even before any translation arrived. Their power reserves were so low that life support might fail any moment. If Earth had not intercepted their signal when it did, they might not have survived another hour. When the convoy captain received that data, he made a choice. He ordered his ships to bring the aliens closer, faster. It was risky. If the aliens suddenly turned hostile, everyone in the convoy would face danger. But the captain believed that no one on that broken ship was in any condition to attack. All the evidence suggested they were simply trying to stay alive. He announced over the general channel, "We escort them to safety." He didn't even ask for approval. He just said it, and everyone accepted it because it felt like the right thing to do. As the convoy led the ship deeper into the solar system, the refugees inside began sending steady breathing-like signals. They were still afraid, but something in their patterns had changed. There was relief mixed with the fear, like someone who had been drowning and suddenly spotted a hand reaching into the water. Earth observed this quietly, absorbing every detail. Scientists moved closer to their monitors. Analysts took notes. Even the military teams softened their posture, sensing that this moment might become one of those rare pages in history when humanity chose compassion before caution. And in that drifting ship, the aliens waited in silence, still trembling, but with a small hint of hope that had not existed when they first crossed the border of the solar system. Humanity was not what they expected. They had been cast out by all others. Now, for the first time in their long journey across cold space, someone finally answered their call. The human convoy moved carefully through the dark stretch of space, guiding the damaged alien ship toward a safer region. Inside every human vessel, the crew watched the drifting craft with quiet focus. No one spoke loudly. No one acted casually. The situation carried a strange mix of tension and sympathy. They were close enough now to see the cracks in the alien hull, the flickering lights inside, and the tiny shadows of the frightened passengers shifting in slow, uncertain movements. The humans on the convoy had trained for countless possible first contact situations, but none of them imagined something like this. A half-dead ship carrying a small group of exhausted travelers who seemed more scared than dangerous. These aliens weren't acting bold or proud. They weren't calling out threats or showing weapons. Their signals trembled like voices on the edge of collapse. Inside one of the human escort ships, a communication technician stared at her screen, waiting for more signals. She kept replaying the earlier message the aliens had sent, the one that roughly translated to a repeated plea. She could still hear that broken rhythm in her mind. Request safe place. Request mercy. No weapons. No threat. That last phrase repeated more than anything else. It was almost heartbreaking that a sensor operator beside her murmured that the aliens were barely keeping their power online. If their life support failed now, there would be nothing humanity could do in time. That made everyone in the room go quiet again. Meanwhile, inside the alien vessel, things were not much better. The refugees sat close together in a dim chamber lit only by a few dying panels. Their breathing was uneven. They watched the human ships outside through tiny cracked screens. None of them understood human language yet, but they understood the gestures. They expected betrayal. Every other world they had tried to approach had first ignored them, then threatened them, then fired warning shots until they fled again. But these humans kept distance, kept pace, kept their weapons pointed away. The aliens didn't fully trust this, but they couldn't deny something felt different. No one was pushing them away. No one was screaming threats through radio waves. No one ordered them to turn around. The smallest of the refugees, shivering near the back of the chamber, tapped their hands together in a slow rhythm meant to soothe fear. It didn't calm much, but at least they weren't alone in the darkness anymore. And for the first time in so long, they were following someone instead of fleeing someone. Inside the human flagship, the captain watched everything through layered screens. He was calm, but not cold. He could feel the weight of every decision. If he made the wrong move, everything could end badly. If he acted too slowly, lives could be lost. But the images on the monitors, the trembling figures, the failing systems, the flickering lights, told him one thing very clearly. These beings were not here to fight. They were here because they had nowhere left to go. He issued a new order for all escort ships to maintain formation but reduce speed slightly, allowing the alien ship to conserve power. Engineers monitored radiation signals and structural integrity. Medical teams prepared emergency kits for species they had never studied before. Even the crew members who usually carried themselves with tough, military discipline softened their tones as they talked. Everyone seemed to sense the gravity of what was happening. Back on Earth, multiple stations received real-time updates from the convoy. The story had not gone public, but the people working behind the scenes whispered about it. Humanity had always wondered whether they would meet peaceful travelers or hostile invaders. But no one imagined meeting a group who had wandered the galaxy searching for kindness and found only fear. The alien ship sent a new pattern of signals. Weak but steady. The translator program struggled, but it identified one phrase repeated many times. Following. 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 It was like they were telling the humans they were trying. Even though their engines were barely working, the human convoy sent a simple response. Stay with us. You are safe. Inside the alien vessel, the words translated into gentle tones. The refugees turned their heads, listening. They did not fully believe it, but they could feel something different in those sounds. There was no threat hiding behind them. No demand, no warning. Just a promise. One of the refugees tapped a panel and tried to adjust their engines to stay aligned with the humans. The engine sputtered, coughed a spark, almost went out entirely, then managed to pulse one more time. They slowly drifted closer to the convoy, and the humans adjusted their course so the aliens wouldn't have to burn more power than necessary. It was a gesture so small and simple that the aliens didn't understand it at first. They sat silent for several seconds, confused. They had always been the ones forced to change course, forced to escape, forced to run. No one had ever made room for them before. Now, for the first time, someone did. Inside the convoy, engineers watched their screens and murmured about how unstable the alien ship's structure was. One more major failure could break the hull apart. If that happened, rescuing anyone would be almost impossible. This thought pushed them all to work faster, think sharper, cooperate better. The convoy's medical chief sent a message to every ship. Prepare for potential critical emergency. We don't know what their biology is, but be ready. On the alien ship, the refugees grew restless. They were running out of air. Their breathing quickened. Their lights dimmed even more. They sent out a trembling wave of signals, like someone reaching out in panic. The humans received it, and immediately responded by adjusting formation to surround the alien craft more closely. The convoy captain activated his direct channel. We are here. We will not leave you. Even though the aliens did not understand the words clearly, they understood the silence that followed, a silence that carried no danger, a silence that felt like a hand resting gently on their shoulder. The human ships released small guidance drones. They floated toward the alien craft like glowing points of promise. The drones connected with the hull gently, stabilizing the alien ship's motion. When the refugees saw this, they panicked at first, thinking it was some new weapon. But the drones didn't drill, didn't attach weapons, didn't cause harm. Instead, they projected soft lights across the cracks, analyzing damage, sending data back to the human engineers. For the refugees, this was confusing. Why would another species spend energy helping them? Why spend resources on strangers? Why risk themselves for those who had been rejected by every other world? They didn't understand humanity. Not yet. They didn't know that humans had a long history of helping even when afraid, caring even when unsure, reaching out even when the darkness felt overwhelming. As the convoy and the alien ship drew closer to the safe zone near Luna Station, the humans monitoring the situation noted that the refugees' life signs were dropping again. They had to hurry. Every minute mattered. The captain ordered all ships to increase speed slightly, but in a smooth way that would not destabilize the alien craft. The convoy moved like a single unit, perfectly coordinated. Inside the alien chamber, the refugees clung to each other. The youngest one whispered weak sounds that the others tried to soothe. Their air had grown thin. Their eyes burned from exhaustion. They had been traveling for too long in fear and darkness. But they kept watching the human lights outside, and something just a small spark kept them from giving up completely. Back on the human ships, crew members felt a growing sense of urgency. They could see the failing energy signatures. They could measure the dying heat. They could sense how close these refugees were to the end of their strength. Even the toughest officers couldn't help feeling a twist in their hearts. Finally, after a long stretch of careful escorting, the convoy crossed into the safe approach path of Luna Station. The station's bright lights glowed like a beacon in the distance. The alien ship responded with a faint signal, one that translated simply as a surprised, almost disbelieving impression. Safe. Safe, safe. The humans answered with steady pulses. Yes, you are safe. Inside the alien craft, a soft sound escaped from one of the refugees, half relief, half disbelief. The others pressed closer, feeling the ship finally stop drifting alone in cold space after so long being cast out. Feared, hunted, and ignored, they had finally reached a place where someone was guiding them. Not chasing them. Humanity had made its first choice, and it was mercy. The alien ship entered the safe zone near Luna Station, with the human convoy still around it, moving like a protective circle. Even though no one said it out loud, every human on board those escort ships felt a quiet sense of responsibility. They had guided a fragile vessel across a long, dangerous stretch of space, and now they were close to bringing it somewhere safe. But the job wasn't finished. The aliens inside were weak, low on air, and close to collapsing. One mistake, one delay, and everything they had done so far could fall apart. Inside Luna Station, alarms and lights activated as the station prepared for an incoming emergency. Engineers rushed to docking bays. Medical teams gathered equipment that had never been used on off-world species before. Specialists on alien biology hurried through corridors, trying to guess what the refugees' bodies might need based on the earliest scans. No one was sure what would happen when the ship docked. They only knew it had to be handled with calm hands and steady steps. The convoy slowed as they approached the station. The human captain gave the final command to release the damaged alien vessel from the escort formation. Guidance drones moved in gently, pushing the ship closer to the docking ring. The alien craft wobbled, sparks flickering from its broken edges, but it held together long enough to reach the platform. The station's magnetic clamps caught it softly, holding it in place like someone catching a falling child. On the alien ship, the refugees felt the sudden shift. Their chamber lights blinked once, twice, and then steadied. The shaking in the hull stopped. For the first time in a long, painful journey, their ship was no longer drifting without control. They didn't understand the human docking signals, but they recognized stability, safety, silence without danger. One refugee, the one who appeared older than the others, touched a cracked panel and whispered a shaky sound that the humans later translated as relief mixed with disbelief. None of them knew what would happen next. They didn't know if humans would force them out, question them, or treat them like every other world had. But something in the way the convoy guided them made them hope this would be different. Inside Luna Station, a small team gathered near the docking entrance. They wore simple suits, not battle gear. Their movements were calm, slow, gentle. They didn't want to scare the visitors. They carried scanner devices, warm blankets, emergency oxygen packs, and tools to open the damaged ship carefully without causing more harm. A technician activated the outer docking bridge, extending it toward the alien vessel like a long metal arm offering help. The station had no idea what these aliens looked like yet. They had only seen blurry heat signatures and tiny silhouettes. So everyone stood ready for anything, but with soft eyes and steady breaths. When the docking bridge finished locking, the air systems equalized. A human engineer stepped forward and touched the panel to open the outer hatch of the alien ship. The door made a struggling sound as it slid halfway, then jammed. Sparks flew from its frame. The engineer didn't panic. He looked at another worker, nodded, and both of them used manual tools to pry it wider without forcing it violently. Inside, the air was thin, cold, and stale. The smell of burnt wiring and old metal drifted out. One by one, the human team entered the alien ship. They didn't move quickly or point anything at the refugees. They walked as if entering the room of someone injured, careful, respectful, quiet. When the humans stepped into the chamber where the aliens were gathered, they finally saw them clearly. The refugees were small, huddled together, with faint glowing patterns across their bodies, patterns that looked like they once had color, but had faded after too much suffering. Their eyes were wide, watching the humans with fear that came from too many bad experiences. Their bodies were thin and fragile, almost transparent under the dim lights. For a moment, no one moved. The humans didn't want to frighten them. The refugees didn't know if the humans were really here to help, or if this was just another cruel trick. They waited, hearts pounding, breaths shaking. Then the human medical leader stepped forward slowly, holding both hands open to show he meant no harm. He pressed a device on his suit that played a simple translation tone. Safe, help, no harm. The refugees flinched at first, but when no violence followed, they relaxed slightly. One of them lifted a trembling arm and tapped a small signal panel on the floor. A weak beam of light shined upward with a pattern that translated as, "We cannot breathe well. We are tired." Humans moved quietly into action. They placed oxygen units near the refugees to increase the air quality. They didn't touch them directly, yet just set the devices nearby and slowly backed away to let them adjust. The aliens hesitated, unsure, but then one leaned closer to the warm air and breathed in slowly. The relief on its face was immediate. The others followed, taking deeper breaths for the first time in days. A soft sound filled the chamber, almost like tiny sobs of relief, though the translation device could not identify them clearly. Outside the ship, more humans brought blankets and placed them gently around the refugees. They didn't know if the aliens understood the meaning of blankets, but warmth was universal. The refugees watched the humans work, confused, but slowly believing that this wasn't a trap. These strangers were not shouting or forcing them. They were helping with patience and kindness. After the oxygen levels rose, the humans guided the refugees out of the ship one at a time. They didn't pull or push them. They simply walked beside them, offering support if they wanted it. The aliens followed because they had no strength left to refuse. When they stepped into Luna Station's bright walkway, their bodies twitched at the sudden clean light. They had lived in darkness for so long, but the humans dimmed the lights automatically, lowering them to a gentler tone. That small act made the refugees relax again. It showed that humans were trying to accommodate their needs without being asked. Medical equipment rolled in quietly. The humans scanned their vitals, trying to understand their biology. The results were troubling. Their energy levels were dangerously low. Their organs seemed stressed from lack of air and long-term fear. Their bodies shook from exhaustion. But they were alive, and that was enough to start Dot as the humans helped the aliens into a medical room. A few staff members whispered to each other about how small the refugees were, how tired they looked, how long they must have been traveling alone. They felt a deep ache in their chests. Even the engineers who usually focused only on machines could not ignore the emotional weight of what they were seeing. While the refugees sat wrapped in warm blankets, drinking carefully prepared fluids designed to match their biology, the human specialist in cultural behavior began observing them. She watched how they held each other, how they looked around nervously, how they avoided loud sounds. Their bodies carried marks that weren't natural patterns of old injuries, signs of damage done not by accidents, but by someone else's cruelty. She leaned toward her tablet and spoke softly into the recorder. They've been running for a long time. Someone hurt them. Someone chased them. And someone pushed them away again and again. The refugees didn't understand her words, but they understood her tone. She sounded worried, not angry. Concerned, not cold. A translator device picked up one of the refugees trying to speak. The voice trembled, weak but carrying meaning. The translation was rough, but the humans understood it well enough. You. Not send us away. A quiet silence filled the room. Every human felt something tighten in their heart. The medical leader knelt near the refugees, keeping a respectful distance. He spoke slowly, pressing the translation device again. No, you stay. Safe here. The aliens stared at him, their eyes widening again. They didn't know how to react. Every other world had told them to leave. Every other world had warned them that they were unwanted. Yet here, the humans offered them something rare and precious: safety without conditions. The refugees finally let out slow breaths that sounded almost like relief. One leaned gently against another, exhausted but no longer terrified. That moment, simple and quiet, marked the beginning of something new. Humanity had not only guided them to safety, but had opened its doors with sincerity. For the first time, the refugees felt their long nightmare fading. They didn't know what would happen tomorrow, or where they would go next. But they knew one thing very clearly: humanity had not turned them away. Humanity had given them haven. The refugees stayed inside Luna Station under careful supervision. But nothing about the place felt like a prison. The rooms were quiet, warm, and gently lit. Human doctors and engineers moved around with calm steps, speaking softly so they wouldn't startle the visitors. Every time the refugees looked up, they saw a human face watching them, not with suspicion, but with concern. For the first time in what felt like ages, the refugees were not running. They were not hiding. They were simply resting, breathing, and trying to understand what this new world meant for them. Even so, fear didn't disappear overnight. Every small noise made them flinch. Every new human made them tense. They were still unsure if this kindness was real or just temporary. They had seen kindness before, brief moments on other worlds where officials pretended to be welcoming, only to push them away the moment they realized the refugees were not valuable enough, useful enough, or simple enough to fit their rules. Humans seemed different so far, but the refugees had been hurt too many times to trust instantly. A human medical specialist entered the room, holding a screen showing early scans. He did not approach too fast. He simply stood at a comfortable distance and spoke through the translator. "Your bodies are weak. You need rest. You are safe here." One of the refugees tilted their head, confused. Safe? That word had lost meaning a long time ago. But the humans kept repeating it, not as an order, but as reassurance. The specialist placed a tray of warm nutrient packs on a table nearby and stepped back, so the refugees could approach if they wanted. It took a moment. Then one of the younger refugees slowly moved forward and touched the pack. It felt warm, not hot, not cold, just comforting. The others followed, taking small sips. Their bodies reacted almost immediately. Energy returned to their limbs. Their breathing eased. Their eyes brightened slightly. A human doctor noticed this improvement and let out a relieved sigh. "They'll recover," he whispered to his team. "They just need time." While the medical teams worked, another group of humans focused on the alien ship. Engineers examined the damaged hull, puzzled by what they saw. The structural marks didn't look like natural accidents. Some areas were melted, others crushed inward. Parts looked torched. Panels were ripped away unless someone had scraped them with powerful tools. Whatever had chased these refugees had not simply chased, they had attacked with intention. Inside the ship's control center, human analysts studied fragments of the distress call. One of them played a short sequence that translated roughly as "hunted," "not wanted," "danger follows," "no home," "no star will take us." The words made the entire room fall silent. A human officer leaned forward and rubbed his forehead. "No star will take us? What kind of life is that?" Another analyst whispered, "Maybe every world saw them as a problem instead of people." That thought bothered everyone. Humans had dealt with hardship, migration, and displacement throughout their own history. The idea of being turned away from every safe place touched something deep inside them. Back in the medical room, the refugees were slowly beginning to trust the humans, not fully, but enough to sit without shaking. One of them pointed weakly at their arm, where faded burns formed a ring-like shape. The translation device struggled, but the meaning became clear. Otherworlds. Afraid, said we bring trouble. Sighed, we must leave. The human specialist listened with a heavy heart. We don't think you bring trouble, he said gently. We just want to help. The refugee blinked, confused again. They did not understand why humans were helping when others had not died as hours passed. The refugees grew stronger. They didn't talk much, but their eyes followed every movement of the humans around them. They tried to understand the gestures, the tone, the rhythm of human behavior. Humanity was loud in some ways, but they were also warm in tone, warm in action, warm in heart. Later, a human cultural advisor arrived, accompanied by a small team. She crouched down slowly, staying low so she didn't seem intimidating. With a soft voice, she said, "Can you tell us your story?" "Only if you want." The refugees glanced at each other. Their body language shifted with uncertainty. Sharing their story had always led to rejection. No one had cared before. Why would humans care? But the advisor didn't push. She sat quietly on the floor, showing she had time, showing she wasn't in a hurry, showing she respected their pace. Finally, the oldest refugee tapped a sequence on a small communication pad. The device blinked weakly and projected shaky symbols into the air. Humans watched closely as the translation system struggled to decode it. The message formed slowly, piece by piece. Long journey. From home chased by those stronger. Hunted across stars. No place to land. Always turned away. Always forced to flee. The refugees froze after transmitting it, expecting humans to react with fear or impatience. Instead, the humans exchanged looks of sadness. The advisor spoke carefully. "We won't chase you. Not here." The refugees did not speak, but their shoulders relaxed slightly. Meanwhile, in the command center of Luna Station, officials debated the next steps. Some worried about the possible threat their pursuers might pose. If vicious attackers were following these refugees, Earth needed to be ready. But most agreed that turning the refugees away was not an option. The convoy captain, who attended the meeting through a live channel, said firmly, "We can prepare for danger without abandoning those who came to us for help." That simple sentence ended the argument. Humanity had made its choice. Hours turned into a full day. The refugees recovered enough to walk on their own. They followed humans through the station, staring curiously at everything, the bright windows overlooking Earth, the gentle hum of machinery, the soft chimes of nearby service robots. Everything looked peaceful, structured, and safe. A rare thing in their experience. Humans, meanwhile, tried to learn more about them. They watched their movements, listened to their sounds, and studied their reactions, not as scientists dissecting a specimen, but as people trying to understand other people. One moment touched everyone deeply. A young human technician approached with a small tray of warm stones. He had noticed the refugees leaning toward heat sources earlier, so he thought this might comfort them. He placed the tray on a table and stepped back. The refugees approached carefully. When they touched the stones, their bodies glowed faintly, not brightly, just a soft warmth. They made small sounds of relief, sounds that needed no translation. The technician smiled. "I think they like it." Even the station commander, watching through the window, felt a smile tug at her face. The refugees began showing small signs of trust. One gestured for a human to sit closer. Another allowed a doctor to scan their arm without pulling away. Their voices grew stronger, though still shaky. Their eyes grew clearer, less filled with fear. But even as they rested, tension lingered in the background. Because somewhere in deep space, someone or something had chased these refugees all the way across the galaxy. And if those hunters were still searching, they might someday follow the trail to Earth. For now, though, the refugees had found something they thought they would never find again: A place to breathe, a place to rest, a place that did not push them away. Humanity had given them a haven, and that simple act was about to change everything. The days after, the huge tension in the galaxy past were quiet, but that quietness felt unnatural. Everyone on Earth knew that the truth about the refugees' past had to come out one day. No one wanted to live in confusion, wondering why so many powerful civilizations hated a group that seemed so gentle and broken. People wanted answers, and even the refugees wanted to know why their entire species had been abandoned, hunted, and blamed for things they never understood. They lived with fear for so long that they had stopped asking questions. But now, under human protection, they finally felt safe enough to look back at their own history. Human investigators began their work slowly. They collected recordings from the refugees, scanned whatever fragments of data were stored inside the damaged ship, and sent quiet inquiries to friendly worlds who might know something but were too scared to speak before. The more they gathered, the stranger the story felt. There were pieces of truth, but many parts were missing, like someone had intentionally erased entire chapters of history. The refugees themselves did not know the full story. They only remembered escaping when their world fell into chaos. They remembered some powerful groups blaming their clans for failures in the government. But they never knew why things happened with such speed and cruelty. Humans listened with patience, writing down every detail, every memory, even the ones full of pain. Humanity wanted clarity, and they wanted justice, not revenge. One day, a human researcher discovered an old transmission fragment buried deep inside the refugees' ship logs. It had been damaged heavily, but a few lines were readable. The message came from someone in a high political position on the refugees' homeworld, recorded years before the fall. The fragment said something shocking. The leaders knew the government was collapsing from corruption and mismanagement. Instead of fixing anything, they decided to choose a few clans, accuse them publicly, and push all blame onto them to save their own reputation. That single discovery changed everything. Humans realized that the refugees were not criminals or failed leaders. They were victims of a terrible political trick. Their leaders destroyed their reputation to protect themselves, and then those same leaders escaped off-world, leaving their own people to suffer the consequences. Other civilizations, who already disliked dealing with internal conflicts, took the accusations at face value. They quickly agreed the refugees' species was responsible for creating chaos and deserved punishment. It was easier to accept the lie than look. Deeper. Earth officials felt a heaviness after the truth became clear. The refugees had been forced to leave their home, not because they were guilty, but because they were easy targets. They were framed. Humanity understood this feeling better than any species in the galaxy. Humans had seen similar patterns in their own distant history leaders, blaming innocent people to escape responsibility. Entire groups forced to suffer because of lies told by those in power. It was a story humans knew too well. So Earth made a decision. They decided to reveal everything to the galaxy. There was a long debate before the announcement. Some warned that releasing such information would anger many powerful worlds. Others believed the truth must be shown, even if it caused conflict. In the end, Earth's leaders agreed on one thing: justice mattered. They refused to let innocent beings suffer in silence. They refused to stand by while lies shaped the galaxy. The broadcast went live across every communication network. It was simple, calm, but firm. Humanity presented the evidence, explained how the refugees had been blamed, and how the original fault lay with corrupt leaders who had vanished from history. They shared old messages, ship logs, and testimonies from the refugees themselves. They did not insult anyone, but they also did not hide the truth. The message was honest and clear. The galaxy's reaction was powerful. Some civilizations were shocked. Others became silent out of embarrassment. Many had accepted the old accusations without checking the facts simply because it was easier. A few hostile worlds tried to argue, shouting that the evidence was fake, but they had no proof of their own. Earth challenged them openly, saying, "If you have real evidence, show it." No one could. For the first time, the truth stood stronger than fear. The refugees watched the broadcast from Luna Station. Many of them cried quietly. They had been called criminals their entire lives, hunted, denied shelter, pushed from world to world like shadows that no one wanted. And now, someone finally believed them. Someone finally defended them. Someone finally said the truth loudly for all to hear. One older refugee, whose body was still recovering from the long journey, said in a soft voice, "We thought no one would ever speak for us." His hands trembled, and he covered his face as tears flowed. A human medic nearby put a gentle hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. The gesture itself carried more meaning than anything else. After the broadcast, several neutral civilizations contacted Earth privately. They admitted they had always doubted the old accusations, but never had the courage to oppose the powerful groups who spread them. Some apologized. Some offered to send supplies. Some wanted to meet the refugees themselves. Humanity accepted these gestures, but they also made it clear that the refugees were under Earth's protection. One message, however, stood out among all the others. It came from a small world on the outer edge of the galaxy. The message said, "We suspected the truth long ago. We are glad humanity had the courage to speak it." Those simple words made the refugees feel a warmth they had not felt in a very long time. Meanwhile, Earth continued to gather more information. They sent teams to old archives, visited neutral stations, and requested access to abandoned data centers on distant moon colonies. Slowly, they pieced together the real history of the refugees' fall. Every document, every recording, every hidden file revealed the same thing. The refugees were victims of a grand deception, and the galaxy had willingly believed that deception. Humanity did not blame the entire galaxy. They knew fear made people accept lies quickly. They knew large civilizations often followed the loudest voice, not the honest one. But they also made it clear that things would be different now. Earth was not going to let anyone harm the refugees again. They were not going to let the truth be buried once more. When the refugees learned the full truth, they were quiet for a long time. Some stared at the floor, lost in thought. Some sat with their hands clasped tightly. Some simply breathed deeply, letting the weight of old pains slowly leave their bodies. For years, they blamed themselves. For years, they felt responsible for things they never did. For years, they believed they deserved the suffering forced upon them. Now they finally understood that none of it was their fault. That realization was both painful and healing. One young refugee, barely an adult, looked at a human officer and whispered, "Why did you help us when no one else did?" The officer replied softly, "Because you needed help. And because it was the right thing to do." Simple words, but powerful. From that day on, the bond between humanity and the refugees became deeper. The refugees no longer looked at humans with fear or doubt. They saw them as protectors, allies, and friends. They knew that Earth had given them something no other world dared to offer: a voice, dignity, and truth. The galaxy, however, was still restless. Some powerful civilizations were furious that their old lies were exposed. They tried to pressure Earth again, but their voices were weaker now. Humanity had shown evidence, logic, and fairness. Anyone attacking them now looked like they were trying to silence the truth. Even their own allies began to question them. Earth stood firm, calm but unshaken, and slowly the galaxy shifted. Not completely, not suddenly, but in small ways. Neutral worlds started questioning old histories. Younger species began discussing honesty and justice. Even some of the refugees' former enemies softened their tone, unsure of what to believe anymore. But the most important change happened inside the refugees themselves. They felt alive again. They no longer looked like shadows hiding in fear. Their shoulders relaxed. Their eyes lifted. They talked more, walked more, and began planning their future. They knew the past had been painful, but now they had something they never expected: hope. Humanity did not erase their suffering, but humanity helped them rise above it. They were no longer the galaxy's exiles. They were survivors, and the truth, finally freed, gave them a new beginning. After the truth came out, life on Luna Station slowly changed. Not suddenly, but in a warm and steady way. The refugees felt safer than ever. Their bodies were still tired from the long journey, and their hearts carried scars that would take years to heal, but their steps were lighter. For the first time in a long time, they could wake up without fear that someone might attack them, force them to leave, or call them criminals. Human doctors checked their health every day. Engineers repaired their ship bit by bit, even though everyone knew the refugees would not be forced to go anywhere unless they wanted to. Human workers brought them fresh clothes, better food, and even small things like warm blankets and soft lights for their rooms. Humans understood that comfort was not just physical. It was emotional. It made people feel safe. One morning, a human officer walked into the main hall where the refugees were gathered. He held a simple message in his hands, and his face carried a calm smile. He said, "Earth offers you long-term refuge. You can stay as long as you wish. You are free here." Those words spread through the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. Some refugees gasped softly. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Some stared at the floor, overwhelmed. For years, they lived like ghosts drifting in space. They had no home, no promised land, no safe corner in the galaxy. But now they had something precious, a place where they could exist without fear. A young refugee stepped forward and said in a shaky voice, "You trust us?" The officer nodded. "We do. You deserve a life like anyone else." That simple answer made tears fall once again, but these tears were different. They were tears of relief. Over the next weeks, the refugees began helping around the station, not because humans asked them to, but because they wanted to give something back. Some of them had skills in engineering and were amazed at human technology. Others were good at healing and found places in the medical section. A few were good at teaching and began sharing their history and language with human researchers. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming part of a new community. Human children visiting the station were the most curious of all. They walked right up to the refugees and asked innocent questions without fear. Children always see the world with simple eyes. They saw the refugees as interesting, gentle beings, not as dangerous outsiders. The refugees smiled, spoke softly, and answered every question patiently. Many of them said they had forgotten what it felt like to hear a child laugh. The sound warmed their hearts. News channels across Earth showed peaceful images of humans and refugees working together. Some parts of the galaxy still complained, but their voices grew weaker. They no longer had the power to twist the truth. Humanity stood too firmly. Anyone trying to blame the refugees now only made themselves look unreasonable. One day, Earth's leaders decided to hold a special gathering to mark a new beginning. The meeting was not grand or fancy. It was simple, friendly, and held in a large hall on Luna Station. Representatives from different parts of Earth attended. A few neutral species from the outer regions of the galaxy came as well. They wanted to see the refugees with their own eyes. They wanted to understand how humanity had changed the story so completely. The refugees entered the hall together, their steps steady. They were no longer afraid of being judged. Humans greeted them warmly, offering seats, drinks, and gentle smiles. Everyone could feel the change in the air. It felt like the first chapter of a peaceful future. A young refugee was chosen to speak on behalf of their group. He had a calm voice and clear eyes. He stood at the front of the hall, facing humans and guests alike. He did not use complicated words or long speeches. He simply said, "We were cast out by all. You welcomed us. We will not forget." The room fell silent for a moment. Those words touched everyone deeply. A human representative stood and replied, "You are safe here. You don't owe us anything." This is what people should do for each other. After the meeting, the atmosphere felt lighter. The refugees began talking to visitors, sharing stories of their past, their culture, and their dreams for the future. Some guests admitted they were surprised to see how gentle the refugees were. They had believed the old lies for so long that the truth felt shocking. But seeing them up close erased every doubt. Meanwhile, children played in the open corridors, humans and refugees together. They ran around the station, laughing, drawing pictures, and showing each other tiny glowing crystals or small toys. The station felt alive in a new way. As the days passed, humanity continued to support the refugees. Officers helped them find roles suited to their skills. Scientists worked with them to decode old memories buried in their minds. Artists even began painting scenes of humans and refugees standing together, symbolizing unity and hope. The refugees started planning their future. Some dreamed of settling on Earth. Others wanted to build a small colony on a quiet moon or planet under human protection. A few talked about rebuilding their culture slowly, teaching their children the traditions they feared were lost. Humanity promised to help them every step of the way. At the same time, the galaxy kept shifting. A few civilizations reached out to Earth, asking for cooperation or offering resources in exchange for peace. Some were embarrassed by their earlier accusations and sought to repair their relationship. Humanity listened, but remained cautious. Trust was earned, not demanded. Still, Earth believed in dialogue. Humanity always had a strange ability to change the direction of events through patience and courage. They did not want revenge. They wanted stability and fairness. The refugees watched this with admiration. They had never seen a species fight so firmly for justice while remaining peaceful. The strongest moment came weeks later, when a small group of refugee children went outside the station for the first time. It happened on a clear morning. They stood on a protected observation balcony, wearing warm clothes and guided by human caretakers. As they looked at Earth hanging below them, glowing blue and green, their eyes widened. One of them whispered, "Is that our home now?" A caretaker replied gently, "Yes, if you want it to be." The child pressed their small hand against the glass, staring at the planet with awe. "It looks safe." That single sentence captured everything. Later that evening, a group of refugees walked through one of the cities on Earth. The air was fresh. The streets were peaceful. People walking by looked at them not with fear, but with curiosity and kindness. Vendors offered them snacks. A family waved at them. Children pointed and smiled. The refugees felt something they had not felt in decades: normalcy. They walked along the river, watching lights shimmer on the water. They listened to distant music, soft laughter, and the quiet hum of human life. They felt like they were part of the world again. At